All right, whenever you're ready, Jackson.
It's going good now.
Mm-hmm.
So hello everyone and welcome to the SUNY New Paltz SAAC Diversity and Inclusions Subcommittee interview series. Today we have the first interview featuring one of our members, Carly Croteau, who is interviewing SUNY New Paltz men's soccer alumni, Sebastian Gordon-Somers-Archer, who is doing great social justice work in his community back home. So without further ado, I'm going to hop off and I'm going to let them take it away.
So my first question for you, Sebastian, I have a lot, obviously, as you know. So my first one is, were you an advocate for the BLM movement before you came to New Paltz, or was that something that you wanted to emphasize more once you came to school?
I mean, we obviously know the history of this country, and it's something that I was aware of as a Black man growing up my whole life, but we didn't live in the era of, political savviness of, growing up with all these protests happening and technology really putting everything out there and us being able to see on social media everything that's happening every day all over the world. So it wasn't really in the forefront of my mind growing up, nor was it as much at even school. I mean, it was there, and obviously like I thought about it often, but you're in school, so your priorities are different. You're on a sports team and you want to get good grades, and there's so many things happening at once, especially being in a little like nice bubble up in New Paltz. You don't really think about the things that still continue to affect people who are suffering at the hands of a broken system that often. So it really started after graduating, when I realized like, all right, this is a clear issue that still happens today, and it affects me and my friends and my family. So it's necessary for me to take a stance as someone who has at least a little bit of influence,
Yeah. And would you say that there was like a specific event in your life that you remember that made you realize like, I need to take a stand like now? Or was it just kind of more general that you finally just came to your senses like that?
I mean, I would say there were moments throughout my life that, I wouldn't call them catalysts for me making a stance or bringing change to my own personal life. But there were definitely moments growing up where I, faced some racism, even just on the soccer field, or, moments just being me and hearing the way other people talk or make fun of without even realizing it. But then, after graduating, all of the protests that were happening and, just really going throughout college and seeing everything happening on social media constantly has created an environment where people are just much more, they realize what's happening much more often. And so they're able to get more involved at a higher level than we were previous to the social media age.
It has its positives and its negatives, social media, but
It's true.
So, again, since you grew up in New York, that's a very diverse area. So is that another influence? Again, you've kind of touched upon it a little bit before, but how was your experience growing up within New York?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I'm from Queens, which is known as like the world's borough. We speak so many different languages. You walk down the block, you'll see people of 5 different ethnicities. So it's kind of, it's beautiful, it's a melting pot where people of all these various worldviews and life backgrounds come together and are forced to live in this like condensed neighborhood. So I think it's beautiful, and it's part of the reason why a lot of social change has been created in New York City, because we're forced to realize and see these things that are affecting the individual. And we're kind of forced, because everyone's living so close to each other, to make a change and take a stance on these issues.
Yeah, and when you were younger, did your family have like any impact on your views, or would they explain anything to you, like living in such a diverse area and you being surrounded with numerous different groups of people?
Yeah, I've gotten a few of those conversations. I mean, growing up as a Black person, most Black parents will have a conversation with their kid, which is the sad reality of the world that we live in. But most Black parents will be like, there are people who think a certain way, and unfortunately this is something that we have to live through, and you're strong and you're beautiful and you'll get through it. But also, yeah, just growing up in Queens and having friends of every different race has allowed me to, just think with a more open mindset and be able to make a more inclusive society for everyone else.
And with that, I know you have two younger brothers who I know you're very close with, and they're very dear to your heart. Do you educate them on the movement as well, or any of your opinions, and kind of like share your knowledge with them like your parents did for you?
For sure. And that's just part of being an older sibling. If you have younger siblings, you always just want to try to influence them in a way that you think would be beneficial for them and for their lives. But I would be remiss if I didn't say that, there's days where they'll be educating me on certain subjects because they're so tech savvy at a young age, and they'll have just as much access to information that I have. And so I'll walk into a room and they'll be like, did you know that this happened and this and this? And I'll be like, oh, wow. And then even throughout the protests that we were having, like they were leading the protests at times, and they were out there with the microphone, just, giving their opinions about the subject. So I would say this movement is extremely successful, not because we're able to educate our youth, but because they've been brought into the movement, and for the most part the youth are at the forefront of the movement, and they're the ones that are being more active in spreading their ideas and voicing their concerns.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's awesome though. But also, when you came to New Paltz, if they changed being at New Paltz, did it change the way you viewed any racial injustice movements that were currently going on while you were a student?
That's a good question.
You're a very liberal school, so you're very
Yeah.
you express yourself. So
Yeah, for sure. We are considered a liberal school, just because of where we are and just the overall vibe of New Paltz.
yeah,
But there are, that doesn't mean I haven't experienced things in New Paltz, from people on campus, where we didn't exactly align with similar views. So I wouldn't say that New Paltz changed my views on certain things, but it definitely made me more aware of the things that are currently happening. Just because it makes you realize like things happen in your own backyard. You can continue to have conversations with your family members, with your friends who all might have differing views than you, and explain to them why, maybe let's try to be a little more empathetic and think this way as opposed to just this way. And that goes for every side involved. Everyone can always learn from someone. So
exactly.
yeah.
That kind of leads into my other question. Were there any courses that you took through our university that provided you with more knowledge on the subject?
Unfortunately, no. I was a business major, so I kind of stuck to my business classes. I was a Spanish minor, so that did give me an opportunity to study abroad and, experience a different culture in a different country. But I didn't delve into, African American studies or studies that concentrated in, diversity or society at large as much as I wish I did. But that just also leaves the door open for, grad school. Maybe I'll find another class that will help teach me more about the subject.
There's room for opportunity.
That's true. It's very true.
Since obviously a lot of people who are watching this know that you're very well known with on the soccer field and in the classroom as well, did you ever take the time to educate your team about things that were going on within society? Because I know on the field hockey team, my coach makes it a point of practice and training sessions to talk about relevant ideas going on within society. So did you ever take the role of that, or kind of just let coach
Yeah.
talk?
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say I took the role formally, like where I sat down the entire team and said this, and that.
Yeah.
But in a passive way, for sure, my friends will know me as a very political person, and you can ask any of the alum or any of the guys in my grade or younger, what my views are, because I make it well known, and I want everyone to be able to voice their opinion so that we can have these conversations in a meaningful manner. So yeah, I would definitely say that if you asked any one of my friends, or basically anyone in the athletic department who knows me, they would know what my views are, for sure.
So when you graduated from New Paltz, did you envision yourself being such a large advocate within your community for BLM?
No, not really, honestly. Just because I didn't have any inkling that these protests were going to be occurring. I didn't know that, the social change movement was going to become such an important aspect of our last, or this 2020 year. It wasn't something that I expected to happen. So me, hosting these virtual forums and these protests and teaming up with other organizations it wasn't something that I had planned, which is kind of interesting. That just makes you feel that, every day something else can happen, something new can come about, and it'll just totally change the course of your life and what's happening around you.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but you went to your first protest in June, right?
Yes.
Okay. So did that inspire you to like create your own and want to make a change within your own personal community and you be like the leader of it?
Yeah. So primarily, I wouldn't say that it's about me. I would say that in June, having gone to the first few protests in Manhattan and seeing the mass of people that were out there protesting in unison for each other, of every race, of every age, of every gender, it was inspiring in a way, because it made you think like, all right, this is happening in New York City. What can I do in my neighborhood of Queens? What can I do in Forest Hills? Or what do I see other people in other neighborhoods doing around their areas? So that's what I wanted to bring. I wanted to make people more aware of like, this is affecting you just as much as you see on the news. Like, this is a worldwide issue that we shouldn't be having to deal with in the 21st century. So that was my main takeaway. I wanted to make other people aware in the neighborhood, but it wasn't about me. Like, I want to be a leader. I want to showcase why I'm doing this. It's more of you as an individual. This is about you and what you can do to empower your community. It's a team effort. It's not just one person doing it all.
Mhm. All right. Well, even though you said it's not about yourself, obviously you organized it and you put it together, but how did you do it?
Yeah, so I was lucky that I had some friends organizing a small protest over the overpass of Grand Central, where we just had some signs, and we supported the BLM movement, and we had our fists up, and we were just basically asking for people to honk for justice as they drove by. And we were there during rush hour, so we had thousands of people honking, which was great to see. And so after that, those same few friends and I, like, we created an Instagram, and we were like, how can we further this movement in our neighborhood? So then we just created a flyer, posted it, and that first protest, we thought we were gonna have around 75 to 200 people. Like, that was just from the reactions that we got on social media. We didn't think it was gonna be anything insane. And then the next day, the cops found out about it, and it was going viral, and we had over 1,700 people show up, which was amazing.
Yeah, much more than you obviously anticipated, but again,
Right.
that's what you wanted.
Right. No, it's exactly what we wanted. So it was truly inspiring and great to see everyone come together like that. But again, it just goes to show that, you can just be one person and put out a little flyer, and if it catches on, you'll receive so much more feedback, and it'll make you feel so much more worthy that you're helping out in the movement, and that people actually have similar values and beliefs as you.
Mhm. And did you receive any feedback after you did your protest? Like, did you get anything on Instagram, anything from your friends, obviously, that you were linked with?
Yeah, so we started an Instagram page called Occupy Fohi, Occupy and then Fohi for Forest Hills, where people in the neighborhood can just keep track of what's going on, and any future events. And so a lot of the feedback came from there, just people DMing and following and commenting. Yeah, it was just amazing to see. And so from that, I've been lucky to be invited to be on a few interviews or podcasts or whatever, just able to further in reaching that vocalized opinion.
Okay, so obviously you just touched on some of the highlights, but what were some other things specifically during the event that were highlights for you?
Highlights for me. There was one part of the event that I just can't get out of my head. I just keep replaying it over and over again because it was so beautiful. As we're marching, and there are kids in our protest group with their parents and stuff. It was a very communal, family-friendly event. But as we're walking, there were a couple of kids, a Black kid and a white kid holding hands a little way off. And as we're marching by them, they both had their fists up and they were all smiling and they started chanting with us. And they were these young kids. And it was just beautiful because it makes you realize this is a future that we are trying to envision and trying to make accessible and normalize it.
Yeah.
If people saw that image of those kids all across the world, they would realize, we have so much more in common than anything that separates us.
Mm-hmm. And was obviously a lot of the events were so positive for you, but was there any negative moments that you remember, or was it relatively all because everything doesn't go as planned, as everybody knows, but I'm sure if you want to talk about them, you don't have to if you don't want to.
No, yeah, I will, because it's important for people to also see that, we're not just in a utopia holding hands, skipping down the street. There have been times throughout the protests where people will, flip us off or just shake their head or, walk by in disgust or yell back. And, it hasn't been all rosy, but that doesn't mean we're gonna stop. That doesn't mean that our views are wrong. It just means that these other people are being forced to view us, being forced to see us, who we are and what we stand for and why. And in the end, it's just a matter of, can I make this person see that there are so many people on the other side? That am I in the wrong place? Am I doing something wrong by not empathizing with this other person's experience or this other person's existence?
Yeah. And with that, obviously, how would you guys handle that situation? How did you guys overcome that as a group?
Yeah, so for the most part, we'd usually just ignore them because we did our job in them seeing us. So there's nothing more we can do. We don't want to incite any violence or any more hatred, because then we'd just be playing into their hand. So yeah, for the most part, we just ignore them and keep walking. And yeah, that's really all you can do in those situations.
Yeah, no doubt, especially if you're not trying to it's a peaceful protest that you organize. So obviously you're not going to cause a problem if you don't want to cause
Right.
So why did you underestimate the amount of people you thought were going to come? Because you're in your town, so everybody knows who you are, obviously.
No need to gas me there, but I don't know. It was via the social media likes that I had gotten from the post that I put out, I had maybe around 200 likes. And obviously you're on Instagram, so people might like something and not actually plan on showing up to the event or, plan on actually being there. So I didn't expect there to be any more than that. I was maybe the word will get out and people will hear about it. So we'll have around that 200 number. It could be less, could be maybe slightly more. And then lo and behold, the next day, almost 2,000 people showed up, which was really great to see. Yeah.
And I was going to just ask you, so how does it feel to not only organize, but be a part of one of the biggest protests within Queens?
Oh, it was amazing. It was very gratifying because, again, it just made me and all of the organizers realize we're not alone, and our voice isn't going unheard, and people in our neighborhood and across the world they agree and they empathize and they want to be part of the movement because they see that, we're in the 21st century and equality should be completely normalized. Equity should be normalized at this point. So yeah, just gratifying to say the least.
That's awesome. So do you plan on doing anything else moving forward?
Moving forward, I do see us trying to organize some other forums. Unfortunately, we still live in a pandemic, so it's still slightly risky to meet up in large groups like that. But if something happens, we do continue to meet up. We have our masks, and organizers will hand out, masks if you need, or hand sanitizer, or whatever the case may be. But usually just online forums, we'll do that. We had the Queensborough president join us for one of the forums, which was really cool. We had some other, local politicians join. So as long as we can get the community involved and make sure that our voices are heard in terms of the public government, then that's all we can ask for.
Well, I love talking about all that stuff, but we obviously need to know the Until We All Win organization that you're part of. If you could talk a little bit about that and how you got involved, what you're doing with that, any plans going on that you feel comfortable with sharing, obviously.
Yeah. So that was a program that Nike had funded and started. They basically just selected 14 African-American students from across the United States who have made an impact on our communities via whichever sport we played. And so I was very lucky to be having chosen for that. But because of everything that's gone on, life picks up. We haven't, although we've stayed connected and tried to support each other's programs, it hasn't been as connecting. We all live on different sides of the country. There's people from Inglewood, California, New York, Brooklyn, Louisiana, Georgia, just from all over. So it's difficult for us to meet up and consistently be helping each other's programs out when we have so much on our own plates and so much that we have to figure out on our own. So, we stay connected, and it was a great program, and we got to go to the Nike World headquarters, which was great. And we still have those connections we've made all over the Nike platform and frankly, all over the country. So it was great, but to the extent that we're doing anything more, we'll just have to see what happens.
And I know that you did the New York City Jordan Wings program. Is that affiliated with Nike as well? I'm assuming it is, but.
Yeah, so that was something that I had a connection. So I was able to, I was asked to help lead the Jordan Wings program, which basically just teams up with a bunch of nonprofits to help give students from the city access to art and design work within the Jordan and Nike brand. So that was extremely great to see because we met up with these kids who are just everyday people like you and me, and they got to show us their expertise in terms of design work, and we were able to offer them the opportunity and the platform to showcase their skills and be completely creative and vulnerable and fluent in their design work. So yeah, that was great to see. That program came to an end, but it's a yearly thing. So hopefully it'll start back up when life gets back to normal again.
All right. And then to just conclude everything, bring it all together, come full circle. So do you have any advice to any of those who want to make a change within their communities?
Yes, there's always advice to be given and taken. I would just say that it doesn't take an activist to inspire the change that you want to see in your community. I'm just a normal guy. Everyone is just a normal person. And if you're not happy with how things are going and you think that the society that we live in should be improved and should get better, then there's no harm in you being more active, sharing something on social media, having conversations. They're difficult conversations, but have those conversations with your family, with your friends, with your neighbors, because I guarantee there's every single person out there who has a friend who might think that what they're doing isn't completely right or okay. So yeah, just keep having those conversations and yeah, do the best you can for sure.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Sebastian, for joining us for the first interview, part of the SAAC Diversity and Inclusion Group. So
Thank you, Carly.